Hi, my name is Ryan Mason. This is my video discussion on ethical violations and board disciplines here in the state of Missouri. The most common reasons for the board to discipline counselors, surprisingly, was sexual misconduct. Whether counselors were sexually assaulting clients or counselors were engaging in sexual relationships that were against state ethical standards with clients. Um, for the most part, it was a counselor-client relationship misconduct. In cases, it was immediately after termination. Counselor engaged in social and sexual relationships with the client. There was an inappropriate contact with clients that counselors had. There was sexual assault on a client in one case. And then the other common reason that kept coming up was a false representation of services that were being billed to healthcare providers for healthcare payments. So, like for Medicaid and state social services, they were billing falsely for hours that weren't being served and performed. There was a fraudulent billing case, and that a counselor billed Medicaid for nearly $3,000 in services that were not performed. How I react to this, I mean, counselors engaging in sexual affairs with clients, in most of those cases, it seemed that they were exploiting that professional trust and confidence that the client had placed in those counselors. And it's really a shame how, they could just take advantage of that situation, those clients being very vulnerable and the information released, and, letting their guard down, and that counselor just kind of taking advantage of that situation. And then as far as the fraudulent billing that just kind of seemed to keep occurring, cases that were coming before the board. I mean, the theft from Medicaid, it's a real shame because it seems like in the professional counseling, in the counseling profession already, it's a struggle to be sure that clients are able to receive medical reimbursement for the counseling services that they receive from us. So that's a real shame in itself. Some themes really that I see when I look, at the cases that were brought up to the board for discipline really was just a selfish motivation. I mean, whether it was sexual affairs or fraudulent billing, one was an exchange of goods for services where there was pain pills being exchanged for counseling services. Really just a selfish motivation. I mean, that's the common theme that I saw. To focus on a more recent case in 2017, a former counselor named James Burdick, he was allegedly a client accused him of touching her on the buttocks, vagina, and breast without her permission during a counseling session. Now, obviously, that's a major sexual assault case and charge, an accusation, but according to the ACA Code of Ethics, it's a violation. A.5a, it prohibits sexual relationship between counselors and client, but we're really talking about a lot more, on this specific case because this is all-out sexual assault. It's much more than a violation of a code of ethics. The Missouri Ethical Standards, Title 20, Chapter 3, 11C, is extremely specific, and that a counselor is prohibited in engaging or touching or caressing a client or person on their breast, genital, or buttocks, or any other area. But again, this case, we're talking about sexual assault on a completely different level. The outcome of that was a settlement was agreed upon by this former counselor and the Missouri KIT Committee for Professional Counselors that he would voluntarily surrender his license and never seek for a Missouri professional counselor license again. He pled guilty to a Class C misdemeanor of assault in the fourth degree. Excuse me. A court ordered him to pay a fine of $500. He relinquished all professional licenses, paid court costs. His license number was revoked. Counselor impairment. As the ACA states, counselors are to really monitor themselves for signs of impairment, whether it be physical, mental, or emotional problems, and they are to refrain from providing services if they are impaired. And if it reaches a level of impairment to where they need to seek out services and seek assistance for themselves, and when necessary, they are to limit or suspend or terminate those services until they can safely resume practice. Missouri State Chapter 3, Section 3 standards also state that a therapist should not undertake or continue in a client-therapist or supervisory relationship when the competency level of the therapist has been expectedly or is expected to be impaired because of any familial, social, sexual, emotional, financial impairment, any impairment that could cause them to, their judgment to be impaired. A question that it brings to mind is what are clear signs of counselor impairment? It brings to mind things like burnout or depression or indifference or apathetic, I guess, when in practice. So that's my video. Thank you.